Hey guys, so I'm going to review this quote with you since we haven't seen each other since Monday. So I'd like you to watch it and take notes, and you can either do that by doing split screen or just taking notes on a sheet of paper and then transferring them over onto this PDF that you already have in Notability. After you watch this or after you listen to this video, if you still have any more questions, just let me know. We will review it briefly at the beginning of class next week. All right, so the quote that we're going to go over, it falls in the middle of your slides. It's from chapter 6, so this is the flashback to Jay Gatsby's past, and we learn about James Gatz. And the quote reads, "The truth was that Jay Gatsby of West Egg, Long Island, sprang from his Platonic conception of himself." So the first thing that we're going to write down is Platonic conception. So we are going to have to define that and go over what it means. And the second thing, I'm just going to reword this quote now so that it reads, Jay Gatsby sprang from the Platonic conception, that should be a capital P, of James Gatz. So we're going to go over what this means to say that Jay Gatsby is the Platonic conception of James Gatz. So Plato, an ancient Greek philosopher, he had this philosophy called the theory of forms. We're not going to go over this too in depth, but basically what Plato believed was that there are these perfect ideals of things. So for instance, there was like the ideal love, there was the ideal friendship. But Plato believed that although these things existed, these ideal, most perfect forms of love and friendship and things like beauty, they didn't actually exist in reality. So they did exist, but they kind of existed in this other sphere that was not reality. So instead, in reality, we can have, like, let's say we have a couple here, right? And they can have a loving relationship, but it won't be an embodiment of the most perfect, ideal love that there is. But it might reflect, like, some elements of that kind of perfect love. Same thing if you were talking about beauty, right? Like you had this ideal of beauty, and you can see a flower in reality, and that flower, it can be beautiful, but it's not like the epitome of beauty. It doesn't reflect beauty as the ideal, it just has elements of beauty to it. So basically, you have these ideals that exist, but reality is an imperfect version of that ideal. That's just a simple way to put it. So this quote, what Nick Carraway is basically saying is that Jay Gatsby is also in the sphere of ideals. So let's actually change that color, keep it consistent. So Jay Gatsby is up here. Right? And then down here in reality is James Gatz. Right, so Jay Gatsby is the Platonic conception of James Gatz. In other words, Jay Gatsby is the ideal form of James Gatz. So Nick Carraway, right, he's implying by calling Jay Gatsby a Platonic conception that Jay Gatsby is an ideal that can't actually come true in reality, although James Gatz can have elements of Jay Gatsby, right? He can be rich, he can be reunited with Daisy, he can have a relationship with Daisy. He won't actually be the man, the ideal man that he's envisioned himself to be. James Gatz, when he was younger, he always said he knew some outline of a man that he wanted to be, and then he gave that a name, right? And he gave that name Jay Gatsby. So James Gatz has always been striving for this most ideal, perfect version of himself, but Nick, by referring to that perfect version as Platonic conception, is implying that James Gatz will never actually fully become Jay Gatsby. Right? So in other words, James Gatz, right, this idea that he's envisioned for himself of the ideal man, this just strictly exists in his imagination. So then the question becomes, what makes James Gatz so great if he can never actually achieve this ideal of becoming Jay Gatsby? Like, why name the title The Great Gatsby? Why does Nick seem to admire him? So maybe, perhaps, as Nick is suggesting, there's something to be said for the fact that James Gatz still continues to strive to be like Jay Gatsby, even though this goal won't actually exist. Right, so maybe Nick is saying it's not necessarily the achievement of the goal that matters, but the process, the failures that go into trying to achieve that goal, that's what makes a person great. And this connects to that last quote in the book where Nick is talking about how we see the green light every single year receding before us, yet with all zeal and enthusiasm, we continue to run after it and chase after it, right? And there's a greatness in that, a greatness in the means rather than the ends. So this is a little messy, but if you have any questions, let me know. If you had any trouble reading anything, let me know. Again, we will review this briefly at the beginning of Tuesday's class, so you can ask questions then.